For years, they forgot my birthday. This year, the photo of my new lake cabin suddenly made them remember. Now they want 50%. But I have 100% of the truth, and a father whose 48-hour threat to ruin me is about to backfire. All thanks to a secret hidden in a 17th birthday gift. My name is Emery Price. This year, my 27th birthday came and went in silence. Not a staged silence, but the vast, empty kind that settles in a room when you are the only one who remembers the occasion. I am a commercial lighting designer at Arcadia Lumen Studio. My life is about precision. I work in kelvins and foot candles. I design environments that make people feel exactly what my clients want them to feel: welcomed, focused, hungry, relaxed. I can flood a sterile lobby with the 3000K warmth of a late afternoon sun. I can make a diamond sparkle under a precise 4000K beam. I control light. But in the architecture of my own family, I have always been the unlit room, the one they forget to wire up. The day itself was a Tuesday. My phone remained dark. No text from my mother. Elaine, no awkward, gruff voicemail from my father. Martin, no half-interested HBD from my older sister. Sloan. This was the ritual. My role was to wait, and their role was to forget. By evening, the familiar, dull ache had settled in my chest, a hollowness I had learned to furnish with my own expectations. 3 days later, on Friday, my friends remembered. "We are not letting this stand," Nora announced, barging into my apartment with 2 bottles of wine. Nora's a paramedic. She runs on caffeine and a righteous sense of justice. She was followed by Miles, a software engineer with a heart as steady as his code, carrying a massive box from Talia's bakery. "Talia apologizes," Miles said, setting the box down. "She had a 5-tier wedding cake emergency. But she sent this triple-layer chocolate monstrosity with explicit instructions to consume it all." We spent the night on my floor, drinking cheap wine and eating frosting directly from the box. They gave me thoughtful gifts: a first-edition book on theatrical lighting from Miles, a ridiculously soft cashmere blanket from Nora, and the cake from Talia. They are my real family, the one I built. But as I blew out the relit candles, the gratitude I felt for them was poisoned by the sting of the silence that came before. I was tired of the sting. I was tired of being an afterthought. That night, after they left, I sat in my quiet apartment, wrapped in my new blanket, and made a decision. I was done waiting for them to see me, to celebrate me. The loop of disappointment had to be cut. If they would not throw me a party, I would buy myself a house. It wasn't a whim. I had been saving for 6 years, meticulously. Every paycheck from Arcadia, every freelance gig designing restaurant interiors, every small, successful dip into index funds. I had a file named Future that was thick with 6 figures of disciplined no and not yet. Now, it was time for yes. I spent the next 3 weeks in a silent frenzy of online listings and virtual tours. I wasn't looking for a sensible starter home in a Denver suburb. I was looking for an escape, a fortress, a place that was so undeniably mine that no one could claim a piece of it. I found it 2 hours outside the city, tucked away by the water, Silver Elk Lake. The name sounded like the quiet I craved. The cabin was all angles and glass. When I closed the deal, I didn't tell a soul. I took a week off work, citing a personal project. That project was me, on my hands and knees, refinishing the wide plank pine floors. I spent days perched on a ladder, installing a lighting system I designed myself. It was my manifesto. The main room was dominated by a massive stone hearth. Rough and cold when I first arrived, I scrubbed it clean. The walls were knotty pine, which I left untouched, letting the wood's imperfections show. The lakeside wall was entirely glass, a series of tall, paned windows that framed the water like a living painting. My lighting did the real work. I used recessed strips of LEDs, all set to a precise 3000K color temperature. It was the color of golden hour, the light that makes everything look warm and nostalgic. It pooled on the wood floors, It reflected softly off the new leather armchair. It made the stone of the fireplace glow. I spent thousands on that lighting system. It was the only part of the renovation I didn't do myself, hiring a trusted crew to pull the wires. On the last day, a Saturday in late autumn, I lit the first fire in the hearth. The sun was setting, and the lake was a sheet of mirrored steel, reflecting the deep, bruised purple of the sky. I sat in the armchair, a glass of wine in my hand, and the silence was different. It wasn't empty, it was full, it was peace. I took a picture, just one. It wasn't staged. It was the view from my chair, the fire crackling in the stone hearth, the warm glow on the pine walls, and beyond the glass, the dark, still water holding the last of the light. I opened Instagram. I typed a caption, short and true. Best birthday I've ever thrown for myself. I hit post, and then I turned off my phone, slept in my own quiet house, and drove back to Denver the next morning feeling, for the first time, entirely whole. On Monday morning, my phone exploded. It started at 8:03 a.m., a text from my mother. Elaine, call me immediately. 8:05 a.m., my sister, Sloan. What the hell? Emery. Call Dad. 8:06 a.m., my father, Martin. You will call me before you do anything else. Now, there was no congratulations, no happy belated, no wow, beautiful cabin. Just the clang of a summons. My stomach twisted. This was new. Silence. I knew how to handle. This coordinated, aggressive demand was a different beast. I tried to work. I had a deadline. The Red Juniper restaurant chain was a massive client. They wanted a concept for their new flagship location, and I was in the running to lead the project for Arcadia. I pulled up the blueprints on my monitor, forcing my brain to focus on the schematics. I needed to calculate the lumen fall-off for the bar shelving. They wanted the bottles to pop, but not look interrogated. I started drawing, my pen moving across my tablet, trying to lose myself in the math. Spotlights versus diffused. What beam angle? 25 degrees. Too harsh. Maybe 40. My hand was shaking. I pushed back from my desk. The Red Juniper plans blurring. The anxiety was a physical thing, a cold pressure in my chest. They knew. They had seen the post. But why this reaction? It was my money, my life. The intercom buzzed, a harsh, grating sound that made me jump. I glanced at the clock. 10:30 a.m. on a Monday. I pressed the talk button. Hello? Emery, let us in. It wasn't a request. It was my father's voice, tinny and impatient through the speaker. A cold dread, sharper than any anxiety, washed over me. I buzzed them in. I had a minute, maybe two, before the elevator arrived. I stood in the middle of my living room, my hands clenched. I didn't know what to do. The doorbell rang. Not a polite chime. 3 short, sharp presses. I opened the door. And there they were, the holy trinity of my disappointment. My father, Martin, in his workday suit, looking as if he'd just stepped out of a boardroom meeting. My mother, Elaine, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. And Sloan, behind them, already scrolling on her phone, her expression one of profound boredom. They didn't wait for an invitation. Martin Price walked into my apartment as if he were taking a podium. He didn't look at me. He surveyed the room, his eyes cataloging my possessions, his brow furrowed in disapproval. "You've been busy," he said. It was not a compliment. Elaine followed, her gaze flickering. She spotted a couch pillow that was slightly askew and immediately moved to fix it, fluffing it and setting it straight, redecorating my life. One small intrusion at a time. Emery, really, she murmured, a sigh of vague disappointment. Sloan drifted in last, tapping on her phone. Can we make this quick? I have a lunch. They arranged themselves in my living room. Martin stood, hands clasped behind his back, a general inspecting his troops. Elaine sat on the edge of the sofa she had just corrected. Sloan leaned against the wall, her phone still glowing. The warm, safe space of my apartment felt suddenly cold, contaminated. "So," Martin began, his voice the one he used for employees who had made a costly error. The lake cabin. I said nothing. I just stood by the door, still holding the knob. It's a lovely little place, Elaine offered, her voice falsely bright. A bit rustic for my taste, but Sloane's children will love it. I looked at Sloane. She glanced up from her phone. Finally. What, they will. It's good to have a family property like that. There it was. That word. Family. A family property, Martin repeated, nodding. He had reached his verdict. Exactly. Which is why we're here. We need to discuss the ownership papers. Obviously, it needs to be put into the family trust, for tax purposes, and for fairness. The air left my lungs. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an annexation. Fairness, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. Of course, Martin said, his patience already fraying. You bought it with family money, so it belongs to the family. I did what? The money, Emery, the money you were given. I stared at him, my mind racing, trying to find this mythical windfall he was describing. The silence stretched, thick and hostile. There was no family money, I said, and my voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. There was my salary. There were my contracts. There was my investment portfolio. I have the statements. Martin's expression tightened. Don't be naive. Everything you have is because of this family, the opportunities, the education. The education I paid for with scholarships and student loans, I countered. The loans I paid off 2 years ago. We're not here to argue semantics, he snapped. It's not semantics, I said, finding my footing. The cold dread was burning off, replaced by a hard, clear anger. It's the truth. It's my money. I earned it. It's my signature on the deed. It's my house. Sloane actually rolled her eyes. Oh, God. Here we go. Just sign the papers. Emery, don't make this a drama. A drama. I looked at the three of them, these strangers who shared my blood. You ignored my birthday for 27 years. I buy myself a present, and you show up, unannounced, on a Monday morning, to tell me it's not mine. My voice didn't waver. Elaine flinched, raising a hand to her chest. That is not fair. We are very busy. It's mine, I said again, louder this time, looking directly at my father. The cabin is 100% mine. Martin took a step toward me. He lowered his voice, but the menace was gone. It was replaced by something colder, calculation. That, he said, is where you are wrong. That is where you are wrong. Martin's voice was flat, the voice of a man stating an irrefutable fact, like gravity or the time. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were cold, not angry, just proprietary. This isn't your house, Emery, he continued. It's an asset. We're not going to let you jeopardize the family's position with a foolish, impulsive purchase. I couldn't process the audacity. Jeopardize. It's a cabin. I bought it. The transaction is complete. The transaction is flawed, he said, stepping away from the door, moving deeper into my space, toward my windows. He looked out at the Denver skyline as if he owned that, too. We are being generous. We will overlook the secrecy, the disrespect. We will assume you intended to do the right thing. The right thing. Elaine, my mother, leaned forward, clasping her hands over her purse. Her voice was syrupy with practiced concern. Emery, darling, your father is just saying, we are a family. What one has, we all share. I don't remember much sharing, I said. She winced, a tiny theatrical gesture. Don't be difficult. We raised you. We gave you everything you needed to get where you are. All those art classes. The computer for your designs. The computer I bought working weekends at the diner, I corrected her, my voice low. The art classes I got scholarships for. You see, Elaine said, turning to Martin as if I'd proven her point. She's always been so independent, so ungrateful. Martin turned back from the window. The trap was set. We're not asking for the whole thing, though by rights we could. We just need 50% ownership. We'll add it to the family trust. It's a simple signature. Your duty to this family. 50%. The number hung in the air. Obscene. 50% of my savings. 50% of my late nights. 50% of the peace I had built with my own hands. Sloane sighed, loud and exaggerated, pushing off the wall. She finally put her phone in her pocket, which meant she was truly annoyed. Oh my God, Emery, just sign it. It's a lake house. It'll be good for the kids. My kids. They need a place to run around that isn't Grandma's stuffy backyard. Your kids, I repeated, tasting the bitterness. You want me to hand over half of my life savings so your children have a place to play? It's called being an aunt, Sloane said, as if I were stupid. It's called being part of a family. Why is this so hard for you? Why do you always have to be the martyr? The word martyr struck a nerve, and the nerve ignited. The years of polite silence, of swallowing the disappointment, of resetting my expectations to zero, it all came rushing up. A family, I asked. My voice was different now. The tremor was gone. It was replaced by something steel-hard. Tell me about family. Sloane, is family forgetting my birthday every single year? For, what, the last decade? Elaine bristled. We do not forget. We are busy. You know how hectic our lives are. You were busy, I said, nodding. When I graduated from college, summa cum laude, I saved you a seat. You, Mom, Dad, Sloane, none of you showed up. I sat next to 3 empty chairs while Nora's parents took me out to dinner afterward. There was a scheduling conflict, Martin said dismissively, and the portfolio showcase. I pushed on, the images replaying in my head. My first big review. The one that got me the internship that led to Arcadia. I sent you 5 invitations. I hand-delivered one. I called. I texted. I stood at the door of that gallery for 3 hours, watching everyone else's parents show up. You were at a golf tournament. Dad. Sloane. You were getting drinks. This is irrelevant, Martin snapped. It is entirely the point. I was shouting now, and it felt good. You only see me when I have something you want. When I was just Emery, I was invisible. But now I am Emery who owns a lake cabin. Suddenly you're all here on a Monday morning with paperwork. Elaine stood up, her face pale with indignation. I will not be spoken to this way in your apartment. My apartment, my cabin, my money. Martin raised a hand, and silence fell. He was used to commanding rooms, and even now, the gesture had weight. Enough of this hysterical revisionist history. The decision is simple. You sign over 50% to the trust, or we will handle this. We are trying to protect you. Protect me from what my own success. From yourself, he said. I looked at the 3 of them. My father, the tyrant, my mother, the enabler, my sister, the beneficiary. They were a closed system, a corporation, and I had just announced an asset they hadn't accounted for. No, I said. It was quiet. Sloane scoffed. No, I said again, louder. The word was a shield. It was a sword. It was the hardest, cleanest, most beautiful word in the English language. I will not be giving you 50%. I will not be giving you 10%. You will not get a key. You will not be dropping by. It is mine. The shift in the room was immediate. The false pretense of family concern evaporated. Martin's face didn't get red. It got paler, tighter. This was not a family dispute anymore. This was a hostile negotiation, and I had just refused the terms. He picked up his briefcase, which he had set by the door. He clicked it open, but took nothing out. It was just a prop, an action to occupy the silence. I see, he said, his voice dangerously low. You have always been selfish, stubborn, but I thought you were intelligent. I am intelligent, I said. That's why I'm saying no. He snapped the briefcase shut. You have 48 hours. 48 hours for what? I asked, though a cold knot was forming in my stomach. You can't force me to sign. 48 hours, he repeated, to reconsider your no, to come to your senses and sign the papers by 5 p.m., Wednesday. Or what? He smiled. It was a terrible expression. It did not touch his eyes. Or consequences. What does that mean? I demanded. He walked to the door, pulling his coat straight. What is that big project you're so proud of, the one you've been working on, that restaurant chain, Red Juniper, isn't it? My blood turned to ice. I know the CEO, he said casually. We sit on the same charitable board. We play golf. And I know the partners at Arcadia. They value stability. They value reputation. I couldn't breathe. He was threatening my job, my career, the very thing that gave me the independence to buy the cabin in the first place. You wouldn't, I whispered. It would be a shame, he mused. If your partners, and your biggest clients, were to hear that you were unstable, financially overextended, perhaps involved in some questionable financial dealings, it's amazing how fast a reputation can be re-evaluated with 1 or 2 phone calls. Elaine looked vaguely uncomfortable, but she said nothing. She just picked up her purse and moved toward the door. Sloane, however, looked impressed. She gave a small, approving nod. That's extortion, I said, my voice shaking. That's family, Martin corrected me. We are trying to save you from a major financial and legal entanglement. If you don't sign, we will have to assume you are compromised, and we will act accordingly to protect the family name and our own interests. He opened the door. 5 p.m., Wednesday. I'll have my lawyer send the documents to your email. Be smart. Emery. Elaine paused in the doorway. We're doing this for your own good, dear. Sloane just brushed past me. Don't be stupid, she muttered, and then they were gone. The door clicked shut. I stood in the silence, listening to the ding of the elevator down the hall. My apartment felt huge and cold again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was filled with the residue of their presence. The smell of my mother's perfume, the indentation on the sofa cushion, the threat hanging in the air. My legs gave out. I didn't fall, but I had to grab the back of a chair. My hand wasn't just shaking. It was vibrating, a low, uncontrollable tremor. I looked at it, detached, as if it belonged to someone else. The Red Juniper Project. My name at Arcadia. He had aimed his weapon at the foundation of my entire life. He knew exactly where to hurt me. I fumbled for my phone on the kitchen counter. My fingers were clumsy. I opened the group chat with Nora, Miles, and Talia. They were here. That's all I typed. My phone buzzed almost instantly. A call from Nora. I hit accept, but I couldn't speak. Emery, what happened? Who was there? My family, I managed to say. Dad, I told her. The whole thing, the 50% demand, the family trust, the 48 hours, the threat against Red Juniper. There was a silence on Nora's end, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was the silence of pure, distilled rage. That absolute bastard, she said finally, her voice terrifyingly calm. Okay, I'm coming over. I'm on shift, but I don't care. I'll be there in 20. Miles texted. What does he mean? Consequences. What did he say? Talia texted. I am baking you a literal go-to-hell cake. And I'm calling my cousin in the DA's office to ask about extortion. Nora texted, do not respond to them. Do not text. Do not email. Do not answer the door. We are handling this. The support flooded in, a warm tide pushing back the cold. I took a deep breath. The shaking in my hands started to subside. They were wrong. I wasn't alone. I hadn't been alone for years. I just kept forgetting. I looked at the clock. 11:15 a.m. I had until Wednesday. My father had mistaken my silence for weakness. He thought I was the same girl who sat by the empty chairs at graduation. He was wrong. That girl was gone. I had burned her away and rebuilt myself with steel. The resolve hardened in my chest. A cold, dense weight that felt like armor. He wanted 50%. He wanted 10%. He wanted a key. He would get nothing. He would not get 1 square inch of my property. He would not get $1 of my money. And he would not touch 1 client in my portfolio. I had 48 hours. He thought I would spend them panicking. I was going to spend them preparing for war. I took another breath. Closing my eyes, I pictured the schematics for the red juniper project, the precise angles, the calculated warmth, the control. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Nora back. I didn't text the group. I opened my contacts and scrolled to Q. I had met Marcella Quinn at a Women in Design networking event 6 months ago. She was a panelist, a shark in a sharp, tailored suit who specialized in intellectual property and business litigation. She had given a speech about protecting your assets that had impressed me so much. I'd asked for her card. I had entered her number, just in case. Today was just in case. Her assistant put me through almost immediately. Marcella Quinn. Her voice was crisp, no nonsense. Marcella, this is Emery Price. We met at the AWA event. I'm a lighting designer. I remember, she said. Arcadia Lumens. You had the smart take on CRI ratings. What can I do for you? Emery. I told her everything, from the Instagram post to the confrontation 10 minutes ago. I gave her the exact wording. 50%. Family trust. 48 hours. Consequences. Red juniper. She didn't interrupt me once. She just listened. When I finished, the silence on her end was different from Nora's. It wasn't rage. It was a terrifying, professional calm. Emery, she said, and her voice was a steel girder. Let's be perfectly clear on the facts first. Did you, at any point, accept any large sums of money from your father or your family in the last, say, 7 years? No, never. My savings are 100% from my salary and my own investments. I have the bank statements to prove it. Did you ever sign an agreement, even an informal one, a letter of intent, or an email, stating you were purchasing this property for the family, or with the family? No, absolutely not. This was my escape from them. Is your name the only name on the deed and the mortgage, if any? The only one. I am the sole owner. Marcella let out a sound that was almost a laugh, but was too dry, too sharp. Good. Then legally, Martin Price can go pound sand. He has no claim. 0. The relief was so profound. I nearly dropped the phone. He said he would call my clients. He'll ruin my reputation. That, Marcella said, and now her voice was positively arctic, is where this stops being a family dispute and starts being tortious interference with business. It is defamation, and it is, as you correctly identified, attempted extortion, she continued. Your father has made a critical mistake. He put a deadline on it, a 48-hour clock. That is a gift. It shows intent. Here is what you are going to do. You are not going to respond. You are not going to answer his calls. You are not going to reply to his emails. You are going to forward everything to me, every text, every voicemail, every email his lawyer sends. He said he'd have his lawyer send papers. Excellent. I look forward to reading them. You, Emery, are going to go about your life. You are going to work on your red juniper designs. If anyone, a client, a partner, contacts you sounding strange, you will be polite, and you will document the call, and you will send that information to me. So I just wait. You don't wait, Marcella said. You build your fortress, and you let me sharpen the knives. Hanging up with Marcella was like replacing a faulty circuit breaker. The power came back on, but it was a different kind of power, not the warm, ambient glow I designed for my clients, but a cold, blue-white, 3-phase current. It was the light of a laboratory, of a surgical suite. It was the light of a fight. My panic was gone, replaced by a crystalline, focused rage. My father thought I was hysterical. He thought I was compromised. He was about to find out how meticulous I was. My first task, as Marcella had instructed, was to become my own historian. I started with the threats. I opened a new document and labeled it Timeline of Harassment. The first entry was easy. Monday, approximately 10:30 a.m. Martin Price, Elaine Price, and Sloane Price arrive unannounced at my apartment. Demand 50% ownership of my cabin. Threat ruin my reputation with Arcadia Lumens and my client, Red Juniper. If I do not comply by Wednesday, 5 p.m., seeing it written out, clinical and dry, stripped it of its emotional power and revealed it for what it was, a crime. Next, I built my fortress. I went to my home office and pulled the external hard drive from my desk. For the next 5 hours, I worked. I didn't stop for food. I didn't check the storm of texts I was certainly receiving from Nora and the group. I was a machine building a case. My father had built his empire on assumptions and relationships, on golf course handshakes and veiled threats. I had built my life on data. I opened my financial records. I went back not just 6 years, but 8, all the way back to my first paid internship. I pulled every direct deposit stub, every freelance contract for a restaurant lighting gig, every W-2. I logged into my Vanguard account. My father assumed my opportunities came from him. The truth was, I had started investing the moment I paid off my student loans. I printed the statements, month by month, showing the steady, unremarkable growth of my index funds. I highlighted the dividends, the small, consistent payouts I had reinvested, year after year. This was the family money he was talking about. It was my money. By 6 p.m., my printer was hot to the touch and my floor was covered in paper, bank statements, tax returns, investment portfolios, contracts. I organized them into a single, beautiful, undeniable narrative of my own success. Then I gathered the cabin documents. The deed, closing statements, the wire transfer confirmation for the down payment. I used a yellow highlighter to mark the source account for that transfer, my own high-yield savings account, which I had painstakingly fed for half a decade. I highlighted the closing date. I highlighted my name, and my name alone, on every single signature line. I created a new, encrypted folder on my cloud drive, cabin funding proof. I scanned every single piece of paper, one by one, until my back ached and my eyes burned. The digital files were uploaded and secured. Then I took the physical copies. I 3-hole punched the entire stack, which was now several inches thick. I put it all into a heavy 3-ring binder. On the spine, I inserted a label with the same title, Cabin Funding Proof. I locked the binder, along with my hard drive, in the small, fireproof safe I kept hidden in my closet. My father could bring his lawyers. He could bring his family trust. I would bring receipts. I was finally done. Just after 10 p.m., I was exhausted, but I was clear. I made a cup of tea and was about to text my friends when the intercom buzzed again. My blood ran cold. It was him. He was back. He was breaking the 48-hour truce. I stared at the speaker, my heart hammering. I remembered Marcella's words, "Do not answer, do not engage." The buzzer sounded again. Longer this time, more insistent. I put my hands over my ears. Then my phone vibrated. A text. Not from my father. It was Sloane. Please, it's just me. I'm alone. I need to talk to you. Please let me in. I'm not on his side. I read the message 3 times. I'm not on his side. It could be a lie. A Trojan horse. My father was manipulative enough to use her, and she was weak enough to be used. The buzzer again. Then another text. He's lying. Emery, about everything. Please, I'm getting soaked out here. It was raining. I hadn't even noticed. I took a breath. Against Marcella's advice, against my own better judgment, I walked to the intercom. You're alone. I swear. Her voice crackled, small and thin. I took a rideshare. My car is at home. He and Mom don't know I'm here. I pressed the button. A minute later, she was at my door. She looked nothing like the sharp, bored woman who had stood here that morning. Her hair was plastered to her head from the rain. Her mascara was running. She looked tired. Genuinely, bone-deep tired. She wasn't carrying her designer bag. She just had her phone in her hand. I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside. She walked in slowly, dripping on my entryway floor. She looked around the apartment, but this time, not with judgment, with something like envy. "He's going to ruin everything, isn't he?" she said. It wasn't an accusation, it was a question, and she looked terrified. "He's going to try," I said, handing her a dish towel from the kitchen. "Why are you here?" "Sloan," she wiped her face, a black smear of makeup coming away on the white towel. "He's building a case. Me, a real one." "He has no case," I said, the binder in my safe giving me a false sense of bravery. "I have the proof. It's my money." "He's going to say it isn't," Sloan said, her voice dropping. "He's going to say he gave you a loan." I stared at her. "What loan? He's never given me a dime." "A family loan," Sloan whispered, moving further into the room. "He's claiming he gave you $200,000 in cash, off the books, back in 2022, as an early inheritance to help you invest. He's going to say that money is what you used to buy the cabin." My stomach dropped. $200,000. The lie was specific. It was huge. It was exactly the kind of lie that could tie me up in court for years. "He can't prove that," I said, my voice shaking, "because it never happened." "He doesn't need to prove it," Sloan said, her eyes wide. "He just needs to make it messy. He's going to file a lien." "A what?" "A lien. On the cabin." She said the word like it was something toxic. "He wants to cloud the title. That's what he said. He was on the phone with his lawyer. I heard him. He's going to file a fraudulent lien against the property, claiming he's a creditor for that $200,000 loan. He's going to say you committed fraud by not including him on the title." This was so much bigger than a few phone calls. This wasn't just extortion. This was a calculated legal assault. He wasn't just trying to scare me. He was trying to steal my house. "If he does that," Sloan continued, "you won't be able to sell it. You won't be able to refinance. It'll be a dead asset. He thinks he can bleed you dry in legal fees until you have no choice but to give in and sign it over." I sat down. My legs were weak again. This was a nightmare. This was a level of malice I hadn't been prepared for. I looked at Sloan, her wet hair, her running makeup. The morning's anger was gone, replaced by a cold, dreadful clarity. "Why are you telling me this?" "Sloan?" I asked. My voice was quiet. "This morning, you told me to sign the papers. You told me to not be stupid. You were on his side." She flinched. She looked down at the wet towel in her hands. "I know. I always am." She looked up, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in my sister's eyes that wasn't boredom or irritation. It was shame. "I went home," she said, "and I was complaining to my husband about how dramatic you were being, about how you were making this so difficult for Dad." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "And my son, Tommy, he's 8. He was listening. He was in the hallway, and he heard me, and he said, 'Why does Grandpa get to take Aunt Emery's house? That's stealing.' And he looked at me. He looked at me like I was the bad guy." She started to cry. Silent, ugly tears. "He's right. My 8-year-old is right. It's stealing. And I went along with it, like I always do. Because it's easier. Because Dad pays for my car lease. Because he set up my kids' college funds. I am so tired," she whispered, "of being this person. I'm tired of him. And I'm watching my children see me go along with something I know is wrong." She took a step closer. "I don't know if I can stop him. Emery, he's in a different mode right now. I've never seen him like this. He's desperate, but I couldn't let him do this to you without you knowing what's coming." I watched her. This woman who had been my tormentor, my rival, my entire life. She was still weak. She hadn't come here to save me. She had come here to ease her own conscience. But it didn't matter. The information was gold. "Thank you, Sloan," I said. The words felt strange in my mouth. "You need to go. You can't be here. He can't know you told me." "I know," she said, nodding, wiping her face. He would cut me off. He'd cut the kids off. Go, I said, more gently. I opened the door. She walked out, then paused in the hallway. Emery, she said, he won't stop at the lien. The phone calls to your clients. Those are real. That's the first thing he's doing on Wednesday. The lien is step 2. I know, I said. Go. She nodded and walked to the elevator. I closed the door and locked the deadbolt. I leaned against it for a full minute, my mind racing. A $200,000 lie, a fraudulent lien. This was a game changer. I picked up my phone. No more tea. No more waiting. I called Marcella. It was almost 11 p.m. She picked up on the second ring. Emery, what's wrong? He's lying, I said, my voice flat. He's going to file a fraudulent lien based on a $200,000 loan that never existed. I told her everything Sloan had said. I didn't mention Sloan's name. I just said I had new information from a source. Marcella was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was not the voice of a lawyer. It was the voice of a predator. He did not, she said, biting off each word. He is going to file a false instrument with the county. He is going to commit a felony. He's going to cloud the title to bleed me dry, I said. Using Sloan's words, Marcella let out a single, sharp laugh. It was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. Oh, he has no idea what he's just done, she said. He just handed us the sword, and the shield, and a nuclear bomb. What do we do? I asked. He wants to play offense fine. We are going to strike first, and we are going to strike so hard he won't know what hit him. This is no longer a wait-and-see situation. This is active. That timeline of harassment you're building, it just became Exhibit A. Exhibit A for what? For our counterclaim, Marcella said, and I could hear her typing furiously in the background. We're not just going to defend. We are going to sue him for harassment, for intentional infliction of emotional distress, for tortious interference. And if he files that lien, we will sue him for slander of title and ask the judge for punitive damages that will make his head spin. She was typing, talking, and planning all at once. Forget waiting for his lawyer. I'm drafting a cease and desist letter tonight. It will be on his desk, and your father's, and his lawyer's, by 9 a.m. tomorrow. It will outline, in excruciating detail, every single threat he made. It will state that we have documented proof of his extortionate demands, and it will warn him that if he so much as thinks about filing a fraudulent lien, we will pursue all civil and criminal remedies available. Criminal? I whispered. Filing a false document with the court is a crime. Emery. A serious one. He's playing golf course bully. He's about to find out what it's like to be in a real legal fight. We are preparing a motion to dismiss any action he might take, and we are attaching our counterclaim. We are going on the attack. She finally stopped typing. Emery, she said, her voice serious again. You did the right thing by calling. This information is critical. Now, you must go to bed. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, the war begins, and we are going to be ready. I hung up the phone. The rain was lashing against my windows, but inside, I was calm. My father thought he was setting a trap. He had no idea he was walking into one. The calm after Sloan's visit was heavy and artificial, like the silence in a theater before the curtain rises. Tuesday was a day of silence. Marcella's cease and desist letter, a document she'd called pure venom, was delivered by courier to my father's office and his lawyers. There was no response. The silence was a held breath. Wednesday morning, the breath was released. At 9:07 a.m., an email arrived, not from Martin, but from his lawyer. It was formal, cold, and utterly dismissive of Marcella's letter. Ms. Price, our client, Mr. Martin Price, rejects the baseless claims of harassment and extortion outlined in your attorney's letter. This is a simple matter of a defaulted intra-family loan. We have documentation pertaining to a $200,000 verbal agreement from 2022. Our client is graciously offering to forgive this debt in exchange for a 50% stake in the Silver Elk Lake property. You have until 5 p.m. today, Wednesday, to accept this generous offer. Failure to comply will force our client to pursue all available legal remedies to secure his collateral. They had done it. They had put the lie in writing. A verbal agreement. Collateral. I forwarded it to Marcella with no comment. Her reply was instant. They're insane. Verbal agreement for $200,000. A judge will laugh them out of court. Stay off the phone. Work. Document everything. He's just given us more rope. I tried to work. I opened the red juniper blueprints. I stared at the bar elevation, trying to calculate the beam spread. But the numbers kept blurring. The attack didn't come from my phone. It came from my boss at 11:30 a.m. An email from the head partner at Arcadia Lumens, Emery. I've just had a very disturbing call from a colleague. Please come to my office. Now. My blood turned to ice. This was it. I grabbed my purse, my hands shaking again, and walked into the lion's den. My boss, a woman I respected, looked at me with a pained, confused expression. Emery, she said, I had a call from Martin Price. He said he was your father. He told me he was deeply concerned that you were financially compromised and in the midst of a serious personal crisis. He advised us to review our liability on the Red Juniper project. He hadn't just attacked me. He had used the language of concern. Before I could even answer, my personal cell, sitting on her desk, lit up. It was a number I recognized, one of my oldest clients, a boutique hotel group. I looked at my boss. That's him? That's my client? Answer it, she said. I did. Hi, David. What's up, Emery? He sounded stressed. I just got the strangest call. It was from a man named Martin Price. He said he was a financial advisor managing a family crisis of yours. He said you were, I don't know, filing for bankruptcy, that all your current projects were being frozen. David, that is a lie, I said, my voice sharp and clear. My boss's eyes widened. My father is attempting to extort me. He is spreading these rumors to gain leverage in a personal dispute over a property I purchased. I am not in financial trouble. I am not unstable. I am being harassed. There was a pause. Emery, he said, I believe you. But this is messy. We're a small firm. We can't be involved. We need to pause the spring lighting contract. Just until this blows over. My stomach fell. David, please, let me send you my financials. My business insurance. I'm sorry. We just can't. He hung up. I looked at my boss. Her expression had changed from confusion to a cold, hard anger. What was that? I told her everything. Quickly. The cabin, the 50% demand, the $200,000 lie. She pointed to the phone. Call your other clients. Now. Get ahead of him. I spent the next 2 hours in a blur of damage control. I called every single client on my roster. Most of them hadn't heard anything and were just confused. But my two largest after Red Juniper, had received the same call. Financial instability, personal crisis. I scheduled emergency video calls. I sat at my desk, my cabin funding proof binder now digitized, and I walked them through it. I showed them my corporate filings, my liability insurance, my perfect payment history. One of them, a local restaurateur, was furious on my behalf. That bastard. She said, Don't worry. Emery, we're not going anywhere. You do the best work in Denver. Let me know if you need someone to make a counter call. But the second, a development firm, was colder. This is a bad look. Emery, the project manager said, we don't care about the family drama. We care about the perception. We're pulling the City Park project. We'll pay the kill fee. The call ended. I had lost them. A major contract. A 6-figure loss. The pain was sharp, immediate, but beneath it was a strange clarity. The worst had happened. He had fired his weapon, and I was still standing. My world had cracked, but not collapsed. I looked at the clock. 4:50 p.m., 10 minutes until the deadline. My phone was quiet. The office was quiet. I sat at my desk, numb, staring at the Red Juniper plans, At 4:55 p.m., I heard a key in my apartment door. I didn't even flinch. Nora, Miles, and Talia walked in. They didn't knock. They were carrying 3 massive grocery bags filled with takeout boxes and a 6-pack of beer. "We're not letting you do this alone," Nora announced, dumping the bags on my kitchen counter. She was still in her paramedic scrubs. "Talia sent a pie," Miles said, holding it up. "She called it the Apocalypse Stroganoff pie. I think it's just beef. And she said to tell you that this is the worst part, the part right before the deadline. Talia, who had a bakery to run, was on FaceTime on Miles's tablet, which he propped up on the counter. He's a bully." She shouted from her kitchen. "Bullies always make the most noise right before they lose." They didn't ask questions. They just started unpacking food. They made me sit on the sofa. They put on the worst, loudest, dumbest action movie they could find. They put a plate of food in my lap. I looked at them. My real family, my firewall, my phone, on the coffee table, vibrated. I looked down. The screen was black. 5:00 p.m. The deadline. Nothing happened. The movie blared. Miles was explaining the bad physics of a car jump. At 5:01 p.m., the phone buzzed again. A new icon appeared. Voicemail. My blood went still. The room, which had been loud with explosions and my friends' laughter, went silent. "It's him," I said. Nora muted the TV. I picked up the phone. My hand was steady. I hit play voicemail. I put it on speaker. Martin's voice filled my apartment. It was not the voice of a concerned father. It was the voice of a predator. It was cold, clipped, and full of rage. "You made a mistake, Emery. A very, very stupid mistake. You should have signed. I gave you the generous way out. I told you there would be consequences. You've brought this on yourself. This is just the beginning. You will lose everything." The call ended. Miles let out a low whistle. Wow, he's not even trying to hide it. I picked up the phone. I hit save. I composed a new email to Marcella Quinn. Subject 5:01 p.m. Body. As promised, I attached the audio file and hit send. Nora unmuted the movie. "Okay," she said, handing me a beer. "His move. Now, eat your pie." The rest of the night was a strange, warm blur. We ate. We yelled at the movie. We didn't talk about my father. We didn't talk about the cabin. We just existed. They stayed until I was falling asleep on the sofa. Wrapped in the cashmere blanket Nora had given me, they were a wall, and for that night, I was safe. The next morning, the other shoe dropped. An email from Marcella at 7 a.m. Subject filed. He did it. His lawyer filed the lawsuit this morning. First thing, they're seeking an immediate injunction and have filed a lis pendens, a notice that the title is in dispute. He's claiming breach of verbal contract for the $200,000 loan from 2022. He's an arrogant fool. He has officially, in a court of law, committed perjury. I stared at the words, lis pendens, the lien. Sloan was right. A new email popped up from Marcella. A minute later, and here is our response, which I am filing in 30 minutes. We are counterclaiming for harassment, slander of title, tortious interference, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We are attaching your funding proof binder as Exhibit A. We are attaching his voicemail from 5:01 p.m. as Exhibit B, and we are demanding an immediate hearing and a motion to dismiss, along with discovery for his bank records. He claims he made a $200,000 transfer. Fine. Show us the check. Show us the wire. He won't be able to, because it doesn't exist. He's trapped. I was in a war, a real one. I couldn't stay in my apartment. I couldn't go to the office. I needed air. I needed my fortress. I threw a bag in my car and drove. I drove the 2 hours to Silver Elk Lake. When I got to the cabin, it was cold and quiet. The late afternoon sun was hitting the water, just like in my photo. But now, it felt different. It felt like a battlefield. I walked inside, my footsteps echoing on the pine floors. He had filed a lien. He had put a black mark on my sanctuary. I didn't feel defeated. I felt angry. I went to my car and got my pro camera kit. I spent the next 2 hours. As the sun set, documenting everything, I photographed the custom 3000K lighting system I had designed. I photographed the new wiring. I photographed the receipts for the contractors I had hired, all paid from my business account. I photographed the new furniture. I took a video of me walking through the property, narrating every change I had made, every dollar I had spent. If he was going to claim this, he was going to have to prove he knew a single thing about it. I was finishing, sitting on the dark deck, the sky bruised purple, when my phone rang, an unknown number, local area code. My heart leaped. A client. Another threat, I answered, my voice cautious. This is Emery Price. There was a pause, the sound of a man taking a breath. He sounded exhausted. Ms. Price? My name is Gavin Pierce. I'm your father's business partner at the logistics company. I sat up. I knew the name, Martin's company, his real job. I know this is out of the blue, he said, his voice low and urgent. And I'm taking a huge risk by calling you, but I saw the lawsuit, the one your father filed this morning. How did you see that? It's public record, as of an hour ago. And I've been monitoring his legal filings. Ms. Price, what your father is doing to you. It's not about the cabin, not really. He's desperate. He's about to take us all down, and he's trying to grab any asset he can. A cold, sick feeling washed over me. What are you talking about? We need to meet, he said, not on the phone. He's been moving money for a long time, and I think he's finally been caught. The $200,000 he's claiming he lent you, I think I know where he got it, and it wasn't his. Gavin Pierce suggested a coffee shop, but not a trendy one in downtown Denver. He chose a nondescript place in a strip mall in Lakewood, halfway between my cabin and the city. 8 a.m., please be alone. His text had read. I arrived at 7:45 a.m. The place smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. I took a booth in the back, my back to the wall, my eyes on the door. It felt absurd, like a scene from a bad spy movie, but the sick, cold feeling in my gut was real. He walked in at 8 a.m. on the dot. I knew him from photos on my father's desk, years ago. The Gavin in the photos was smiling, ruddy-faced, holding a golf trophy. The man who walked in looked like he had been hollowed out. His suit was expensive but rumpled, as if he'd slept in it. His eyes were sunk in his skull, underlined by dark, bruised circles. He looked haunted. He slid into the booth opposite me, never making eye contact with the barista. He just looked at me. Thank you for coming, he said. His voice was a dry rasp. You said you knew about the $200,000. He nodded, running a hand over his face. He's a thief. Emery. I don't know what else to call him. My partner of 25 years. He's a thief. What are you talking about? I said, my voice low. Martin. He's been bleeding the company. For at least 3 years. Maybe longer. We're a logistics company. We move things. We have expenses. Fuel. Third-party carrier contracts. Warehouse leases. He stopped as the barista approached. He just shook his head. I already had a coffee, which I hadn't touched. We waited until she was gone. He created ghosts, Gavin whispered, leaning in. Ghost vendors. Shell companies registered in Delaware. He would approve payments for fuel overages or emergency warehouse rentals. Invoices would come in. He would approve them, and the money would go out. The problem is, those companies, they all trace back to a single P.O. box, and that P.O. box traces back to him. My mind was spinning. This wasn't a family dispute. This was a criminal enterprise. How much? I whispered. Gavin looked at the tabletop. As of my last count, when I brought in a forensic accountant 2 weeks ago, he's taken over $800,000. $800,000. It might be more. It's enough to bankrupt us. I felt the blood drain from my face. $800,000. My father, the man who preached about family duty and reputation, was an embezzler. The lawsuit, I said, my mind catching up. The $200,000 loan. That's his in case of emergency fund, Gavin said, with a bitter, hollow laugh. The $200,000 he's claiming he lent you in 2022. That was the exact amount he wired to one of his shell accounts in March of that year. He's not claiming he gave you a loan. He's claiming he gave you my money, our money. It hit me like a physical blow. The lien, the lawsuit. It wasn't just to hurt me, it was to create a paper trail. He's laundering it, I said, the words tasting like poison. He's trying to launder the stolen money by tying it to a legitimate asset, my cabin, by claiming it was a loan. Worse, Gavin said. The auditors are closing in. Our corporate lenders called a panic meeting last week. They see the shortfall. I confronted Martin. I told him he had 1 week to return the money, or I was going to the police. And do you know what he said? Gavin finally met my eyes. They were filled with a terrible, weary rage. He said, "Don't worry, Gavin. It's a temporary loan. I'm just liquidating a personal asset. I'll have it all back in the account in a few weeks." He told me he was selling a property. He was talking about your cabin, Ms. Price. He wasn't trying to get 50%. He was trying to get 100%. He was planning to force you to sell it to cover his theft. The sheer cold-blooded calculation of it was staggering. The forgotten birthdays, the insults, the threats, that was just smoke. This was the fire. My father wasn't just a bad parent. He was a cornered animal, and I was the closest thing he could eat to survive. He's desperate, Gavin said, confirming my thoughts. He thinks if he can tie up your cabin in court, he can show the lenders he has collateral for the money he stole. He's trying to use your asset to get a loan to pay back the money he embezzled. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a simple, black USB drive. He slid it across the table. It was small, but it felt as heavy as a block of cement. "What is this?" "Everything," Gavin said. "The forensic accountant's report, the bank statements for the shell accounts, copies of the fake invoices, side by side with our real vendor lists, internal emails from Martin, personally approving the payments, using his private email address to communicate with the vendors, which was, of course, just him." He put his hands on the table. They were shaking. "I'm filing my own lawsuit next week, a civil suit to have him removed from the company and to try and claw back the funds. But that's a corporate fight. You're in a different kind of trouble. He's using you as a shield." "Why are you giving this to me?" I asked. "Because," Gavin said, his voice cracking, "he's going to ruin me, and he's going to ruin you. He's going to tell the court you were his accomplice. He'll say you knew about the loan. He will burn down this entire family, your family, to save his own skin, and I won't be a party to that. I'm not him." He stood up, his coffee untouched. "Don't sign anything. Ms. Price, not a single thing. Give that to your lawyer. Protect yourself. He's not the man you think he is. He's not a man at all." He walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me in the booth with the USB drive. I sat there for 10 minutes. I didn't move. The world had just recalibrated. My entire life, my narrative of the overlooked daughter, the unloved child. It was all true, but I had missed the real plot. It wasn't about love or recognition. It was about assets and liabilities. To Martin Price, I wasn't a daughter. I was just a line item. And I had suddenly moved from irrelevant to available. My family wasn't a family. It was just a word he used, a tool, a piece of leverage, like family trust or family duty. It was a cage he built to hold his assets. The numbness receded, replaced by that same cold, blue-white light of surgical anger. I picked up the USB drive. I paid for my coffee. I walked out into the sunlight. I didn't go home. I didn't go to the cabin. I drove to Talia's bakery. Nora and Miles were already there. I had sent a text. Code red, 911, bakery, now. Talia had her closed for private event sign on the door. I walked in, and they were sitting at one of the tables, a plate of untouched scones between them. "What's wrong? You look like you just saw a ghost," Nora said. I just met one, I said. I sat down. I put the USB drive on the table. I told them everything. The $800,000, the shell companies, the fake invoices, the fact that the entire lawsuit was my father's desperate, criminal attempt to use my cabin to cover his own felonies. The silence that followed was heavier than the one in the coffee shop. Talia, who was usually all warmth and flower, looked murderous. That absolute snake, Miles, the engineer, was just processing. So, the $200,000 lien isn't just a lie, it's evidence. It's him admitting, on public record, to a sum of money he can't account for. He's an idiot. He's not just an idiot, he's a criminal, Nora said, her paramedic brain kicking into triage mode. And he's dangerous. He's cornered. What are we doing? We're not defending, I said. The words came out of me, hard and final. We're not waiting. We're not reacting. We are attacking. He thinks I'm a victim. He thinks I'm a personal asset. I am going to become his single greatest liability. I pulled out my phone and dialed Marcella. I put her on speaker. Marcella, it's Emery. I'm with my friends. I have something. The case just changed. Emery, I'm about to walk into a deposition. This will get you out of it, I said. My father, Martin Price, he's been embezzling from his own company, for years, to the tune of over $800,000. His business partner just confirmed it. Marcella went utterly silent. I heard a door click shut. Go on, she said, her voice a full octave lower. The $200,000 loan he's claiming in the lien, it's a specific tranche of money he stole in 2022. He's not just lying, he's laundering. He's trying to use my cabin to secure the stolen funds. His partner just gave me a USB drive with all the proof, fake invoices, shell account statements, emails. It's all here. Marcella let out a long, slow breath. It sounded like a hiss. Oh, Martin, she whispered. You stupid, arrogant man. What does this mean? Marcella, I asked. It means, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice, that he didn't just slander your title, he didn't just harass you. He has, in all likelihood, used the court system in an attempt to further a criminal conspiracy. He has handed us a cannon. What's our move? Nora asked, leaning into the phone. Our move, Marcella said, is to burn him to the ground, legally. This is no longer a civil dispute. This is a character assassination, and he's the one who gave us the knife. I saw Miles grab a napkin and a pen. Checklist, he said. 1, Marcella said. I am immediately filing for a temporary restraining order, effective today, based on the voicemail and his partner's new testimony, which I will get in a sworn affidavit. We can prove he is a threat, not just to your business, but to your personal safety. He is a desperate man. The Turo will forbid him, his agents, or his lawyers from contacting you, your clients, or your friends, period. Miles wrote Tro, desperate. 2, Marcella continued. We are filing a motion to strike the lies pendens. We are going to argue that the lien is fraudulent on its face, filed in bad faith, and intended to cause harm. We will attach the evidence from Gavin Pierce as a sealed exhibit, showing the claimant's, let's call it, profound lack of credibility. We will ask the judge to not just dismiss his suit, but to sanction him and his attorney for filing a frivolous and malicious action. Miles wrote motion to strike, sanctions. 3, I said, the defamation, the clients I lost. Oh, yes, Marcella said, her voice turning to ice. That's the final piece. We're amending our counterclaim. We are going to name, specifically, the clients he called, the lies he told, and the exact dollar amount of the contract you lost. We are going to sue him for defamation, tortious interference, and punitive damages. We're not just asking for the $70,000 contract fee. We're asking for 3 times that, for the damage to your professional reputation. Miles wrote defamation, punitive 3x. Okay, I said. looking at my friends. He's at war with his partner. He's at war with me. He's cornered. And we're about to make his world very, very small, Marcella said. I'm canceling my deposition. Send me that file. Encrypt it. Use a secure server. I'll have the TRO motion filed by 4 p.m. She hung up. I looked at the USB drive. My father's entire secret world, on a piece of black plastic. Okay, I said, picking it up. Miles, you're the tech guy. How do I get this to Marcella so securely a ghost couldn't find it? I can do better, Miles said, pulling his laptop from his bag. We'll use a multi-key encryption and I'll route it through 3 different servers. She'll have it in 5 minutes. Nora, I said, I need you to be my witness, my affidavit. Whatever you need. And Talia, I said, turning to her. I need more pie. I'm on it, she said. I drove back to the cabin that evening. Alone. The place was dark, but it didn't feel threatening. It felt like my base, my war room. Miles had made 2 copies of the USB drive. One was now encrypted and in Marcella's virtual hands, the other, the original. I held in my hand. I walked to my small office, pulled out my fireproof safe, the one holding my funding-proof binder, and I opened it. I placed Gavin's USB drive inside. I locked the safe. The solid thunk of the bolt sliding home was the most satisfying sound in the world. My father had tried to steal my house. He had tried to steal my career. He had tried to steal my money. Instead, he had just given me the keys to his own destruction. The hearing for the temporary restraining order was not in a grand, wood-paneled courtroom. It was in a small, fluorescent-lit motions room on a Friday afternoon. It felt temporary, like a pop-up store for legal skirmishes. I sat next to Marcella, my hands folded over a notepad in my lap. I was wearing my most severe blazer. I felt like I was a character in my own life. Playing the part of the plaintiff, my father, Martin, was on the other side of the room, sitting with his lawyer. He looked impeccable in a dark charcoal suit, his face a mask of bored indignation. He would not look at me. Marcella had pre-filed our entire stack of evidence, the funding-proof binder, now digitized, the affidavit from Gavin Pierce, which had been sealed by the court to protect his own pending case, and 4 separate affidavits from my clients, including the 2 who had fired me, attesting to the destabilizing and false calls they had received. We will begin with the request for a TRO in Price versus Price, the judge said. She was a woman in her 60s, with steel-gray hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. Her voice was, as Marcella had predicted, incredibly dry. It was the voice of someone who had heard every lie imaginable and was profoundly bored by the lack of creativity. "Counselor for the plaintiff," she said, nodding at Marcella. "Your Honor," Marcella stood. "We are seeking an emergency TRO based on a clear and present pattern of harassment, extortion, and tortious interference. The defendant, Mr. Martin Price, has engaged in a systematic campaign to destroy his daughter's professional reputation in an attempt to extort a real estate asset from her." Martin's lawyer, a slick man named Harris, was already on his feet. "Objection. Your Honor, extortion is an inflammatory and unproven accusation. This is a simple, good-faith family dispute over a loan that went sour." The judge looked at him over her glasses. "A good-faith family dispute. I see. Counselor," she looked at Marcella. "You claim harassment? Show me." "With pleasure, Your Honor." Marcella placed a small digital audio recorder on her table. "Your Honor, we have a voicemail, left by the defendant for my client, precisely 1 minute after his arbitrary deadline for her to sign over 50% of her property. It was left at 5:01 p.m., this past Wednesday. The file has been submitted as Exhibit C. I have read the transcript, Ms. Quinn, but I find audio to be so much more illustrative. Please play it." Harris shot up. "Your Honor, this is a private family communication. It's prejudicial." The judge's gaze was withering. "It is evidence. Counselor, sit down," Play the file, Ms. Quinn. Marcella pressed a button. My father's voice filled the small, quiet room. It was cold, clipped, and full of rage. You made a mistake, Emery. A very, very stupid mistake. You should have signed. I gave you the generous way out. I told you there would be consequences. You've brought this on yourself. This is just the beginning. You will lose everything. The voice cut off. The silence that followed was absolute. Martin was staring at the table, his face as pale as chalk. His lawyer looked like he had swallowed a wasp. I just stared straight ahead, at the seal of the state on the wall behind the judge. I did not look at my father. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing my reaction. The judge adjusted her glasses. She looked at the stack of papers in front of her. "And this good faith dispute," she said, her voice dripping with acid, "also involved Mr. Price calling his daughter's clients and employers. I have the affidavit here from the CEO of Arcadia Lumens and from a Mr. David Chenoweth, Mr. Gerald Allen, a Ms. Maria Flores." She was reading the names of my clients. Harris stood again, shuffling his papers. "Your Honor, Mr. Price was acting as a concerned father. He believed his daughter was in a state of financial distress, perhaps a mental crisis. He was trying to protect her, and his own good name, from instability." The judge looked up, her expression one of utter disbelief. She slowly, deliberately, took off her glasses. "Counselor," she said, and her dry voice was now sharp enough to cut glass. "Are you telling me that good faith and fatherly concern now include calling a person's entire professional network to tell them she's filing for bankruptcy?" She didn't wait for an answer. "Are you suggesting," she continued, "that a concerned father threatens his daughter that she will lose everything if she doesn't sign over a $200,000 asset? I have read the affidavits. I have heard the audio. This is not a family dispute. This is a predator. This is a shakedown." She put her glasses back on. "The temporary restraining order is granted, effective immediately." She began to read from the order, her voice a monotone hammer striking nails into my father's coffin. "Martin Price is hereby prohibited from contacting Emery Price, directly or indirectly. He is prohibited from contacting any of her clients, past, present, or future. He is prohibited from contacting her partners, her colleagues, or her employer, Arcadia Lumens Studio. He is prohibited from contacting her known friends, specifically," and she read their names, "Nora Ramirez, Miles Chen, and Talia Hassan. He is prohibited from coming within 500 yards of her person, her residence in Denver, or her property at Silver Elk Lake." She looked up. "Any communication, and I mean any a text, an email from a new account, a message passed through a third party will be considered a violation of this order, and I will have you arrested for contempt. Do you understand me? Mr. Price," my father, for the first time in his life, looked small. He stood, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Yes, Your Honor." "Good," she banged her gavel. "Next case." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It was a shaky, ragged thing. Marcella put her hand on my arm. "One down," she whispered. "Let's get out of here." We walked out. I did not look back. The news of a Turo in the small, insular Denver design community was not overt. It was a ripple. It was the sudden silence in a conversation when I walked into a showroom. It was the colleagues who crossed the street to avoid making eye contact. But there were others. The restaurateur who had stuck by me sent a case of expensive wine to my office with a note. "Keep fighting. We need more designers with a spine." My boss at Arcadia, after receiving a copy of the TRO, sent a company-wide memo. It didn't name names. It just said, "Arcadia Lumens stands behind its designers, especially when they are subjected to external harassment. We do not tolerate bullies, in business or in life." It was a shield, and I held on to it. Then, the following Tuesday, the real bomb dropped. Not from our case, but from Gavin's. Marcella had warned me. Gavin Pierce is filing his civil suit. It's going to be public. It's going to be loud. I was at my desk, trying to salvage the Red Juniper project, when Miles texted me a link. It was to the Denver Business Journal. The headline was Stark Logistics Exec Sues. Partner for $800,000. Alleging embezzlement, fraud. There was a picture of my father, a professional headshot, him smiling, confident, the man from the photos on our mantelpiece, the man from the golf trophies. I read the article. It was all there. Gavin's name, Martin's name, the shell companies, the ghost vendors, the systematic and malicious siphoning of company funds. The article mentioned that Mr. Price was already embroiled in a separate, acrimonious lawsuit with a family member over a disputed real estate asset. I was the family member. My cabin was the disputed real estate asset. I closed the browser. I felt nothing, just a vast, cold emptiness. The man I had known, the father I had alternately feared and tried to please, had never existed. He was a fiction. This, the embezzler, the man in the newspaper, this was the real Martin Price. The implosion was immediate. My phone rang 2 days later, an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, fearing it was a violation, but I did. Emery, it was Sloane. Her voice was a cracked whisper. I had never heard her sound like this. Sloane, you can't call me, I said, my voice flat. This is a violation of the TRO. He's using you. He's not, she hissed, and I heard a door slam in the background. She was crying. He doesn't know. I'm at a hotel. Emery, it's over. It's all over. What are you talking about? The house. The big house. Mom. Mom was in a panic after the article. She's been locked in the study for 2 days. She was pulling financials. Oh God. Emery. She found it. Found what? Sloane? A second mortgage. She sobbed. A secret one. He took out a second mortgage on the house 2 years ago for $300,000. He told Mom it was for a bridge investment, but the payments, he's been paying it from his personal account. The money is just gone. The bank is calling. The $200,000 lie about me, the $800,000 theft from Gavin, and now a $300,000 secret loan against the family home. He was a black hole of debt, pulling everyone in. Sloane. She's leaving him, Sloane whispered. Mom, she's actually leaving him. She called a lawyer, her own lawyer. She said she's going to be named as an accomplice if she stays. She said he's a criminal. The words hung in the air. He's a criminal. The same words Nora had used. It's all falling apart. Emery, she cried. The whole house. It was all a lie. Yes, I said. My voice was cold, even to my own ears. It was. What am I going to do? She wept. I don't know. Sloane, I said. I can't help you. You need to hang up. And you need to get your own lawyer. Do not call this number again. I ended the call. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel pity. I felt the profound, aching emptiness of a limb that has been severed. Marcella called me an hour later. Did you see the news? I did. I said, This is good for us, she said. All business. His credibility is now, officially, zero. A jury will see him as a pathological liar and a thief. His lawyer is probably having a full-blown aneurysm. What's our next move? I asked, focusing on the work. We accelerate, she said. He is wounded. Now we strike. I am filing our motion to dismiss his fraudulent lien. We're citing the new evidence, the embezzlement, the secret mortgages. We're arguing his entire case is a malicious fiction designed to hide his own crimes. We are asking the judge to not only dismiss, but to dismiss with prejudice, so he can never, ever file this claim again. Do it, I said. That week, I didn't go to the cabin. I didn't see my friends. I worked. I went to my office at Arcadia, and I sat at my desk, and I pulled up the Red Juniper blueprints. The project was still on pause, but my boss had told me, if you want to keep working on it, On our dime, in good faith, I would not be opposed. So I worked. I let the math and the physics of light be my sanctuary. I calculated lumen depreciation. I specified beam angles. I fine-tuned the 3000K warmth for the dining rooms. I designed a system that was elegant, efficient, and beautiful. On Friday, a small design blog, one that followed the local restaurant scene, posted an article. It wasn't about me, it was about 10 upcoming Denver restaurants to watch. Number 4 was Red Juniper. They had somehow gotten a copy of my initial rendering, the one showing the bar with the light popping the bottles, just as I'd designed. The caption under the photo read, "Red Juniper is promising a new take on rustic dining, and with a state-of-the-art, emotionally driven lighting concept by Arcadia's Emery Price. It looks like they're going to deliver. This is the kind of design that wins awards." I stared at my name, Emery Price, not disputed asset, not family member, not victim, Emery Price, designer. It was a small mention in a small blog, but it felt like a spotlight. He had tried to turn off my light, and I was, somehow, still shining. The small PR win with the Red Juniper article was more than a confidence boost. It was a strategic opening. While Marcella was carpet bombing my father's legal position, I started my own quiet campaign. I wasn't just a defendant anymore. I was a brand, and I was going to protect my reputation with the same obsessive detail I used to design a lighting grid. My first move was to turn my cabin into a proper base camp. The peace of the lake was gone, replaced by the focused energy of a war room. The small second bedroom, which I had intended as a guest room, became my studio. I pinned a large corkboard to the wall. On it, I tacked up the timeline of events, the threatening emails, and a copy of the Business Journal article. But the centerpiece was what I called the defamation map. I spent 2 days doing nothing but calling. I reached out to every client, every colleague, every supplier I had worked with in the last 3 years. I didn't lead with the lawsuit. I led with work. "Just checking in," I'd say. "Saw this new fixture. Thought of your lobby." And slowly, they would bring it up. "Emery, things are..." "Okay, we heard some worrying rumors." I was meticulous. I created a spreadsheet. Column A, name of contact. Column B, date of Martin's call. Column C, the specific lie told. The lies were variations on a theme. Emery is bankrupt. Emery is being pursued by creditors. Emery is having a breakdown and is unable to fulfill her contracts. Emery is under investigation for financial misconduct. He hadn't just made 1 or 2 calls. He had been systematic. He had called at least 15 people. "Thank you for telling me," I'd say, my voice calm and professional. "That is categorically false. I'm currently in a legal dispute with the person who started that rumor, and he is now under a restraining order. Would you be willing to send me a simple email, just summarizing what you were told, for my attorney's records? Because I wasn't the emotional daughter he'd painted me as, but a fellow professional they respected. 12 of them agreed. By the end of the week, I had a dozen emails. Each one was a nail. He said you were fleeing creditors. He claimed you were unstable and unreliable. He told me your projects were all being frozen. I forwarded the entire package to Marcella, who was ecstatic. "This is gold. Emery," she said. "This is a direct, quantifiable map of his malice. We can now put an exact price on this." While I was building the defamation case, Marcella was using Gavin Pierce's USB drive to dismantle Martin's primary lawsuit. She filed a new motion, attaching portions of the embezzlement evidence. Her legal argument was brutal and simple. The plaintiff, Martin Price, had no credibility. His entire claim was based on a verbal loan for $200,000, a sum which he could not prove he had, let alone lent. Furthermore, she argued, the timing of the lawsuit was suspect. It was filed just days after Mr. Price's business partner, Gavin Pierce, had confronted him about stealing over $800,000. "In short, Your Honor," she wrote, "this is not a good faith claim. This is a desperate, malicious attempt by a man caught embezzling to create a smokescreen, to hide his assets, and to financially terrorize his daughter. The motive for the lien is not to reclaim a debt, but to cover a theft. The legal filings were having an effect. My father's side was feeling the pressure. The first sign of a crack came from David, the hotel client who had paused my contract. He called me. "Emery," he said, sounding sheepish. I think we paused prematurely. That was a mistake." "What's changed, David?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Your lawyer." She sent my lawyer a copy of the TRO and some other documents. The news article. My God, Emery, I had no idea. What he did, calling me like that, it was unconscionable. "When can you come in? The spring project is back on, and I'm adding a bonus for the trouble." One down. A few days later, the other client, the development firm that had fully canceled, called me. Not the project manager, but the head of the firm. He wanted to meet for coffee. I was blunt. "I'll meet," I told him. "But my time is valuable. My reputation was damaged by your firm's decision to pull my contract based on a malicious lie." He was taken aback by my coldness, but he agreed. "What do you want, Emery?" I knew exactly what I wanted. "I am in the middle of a major defamation lawsuit. I have already lost one contract. I am not interested in getting yours back. What I want from you is a letter, on your company letterhead, attesting to the fact that you pulled the project specifically because of the lies my father told you, and I want you to send a copy to him." He protested. I didn't budge. "He damaged my professional standing," I said. "And you validated his lie by firing me. You can either help me make this right, or you can be a witness I subpoena." I got the letter 2 days later. The walls were closing in, and Martin knew it. His lawyer sent a feeler, an offer of settlement. Marcella and I reviewed it on a video call. She read it with a look of profound disgust. "He's offering to drop his fraudulent lien," she said. "If you agree to drop your counterclaim and you pay your own legal fees." I laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "He's offering to stop punching me if I agree to pay for my own bandages. It's an insult," she said. "He's still testing you. He still thinks you're that girl at the graduation, waiting for him to show up." "What do we send back?" Marcella smiled. "We send back fire." Our counteroffer was, as Marcella put it, a work of art. We didn't just reject his offer. We enumerated our demands. 1, she read, immediate and permanent withdrawal, with prejudice, of his entire lawsuit and the fraudulent lien. 2, a public letter of apology, drafted by us and signed by him, to be sent to all 15 professional contacts he defamed. 3, full, non-negotiable payment for all damages, including the $70,000 contract I'd lost, my legal fees to date, and a $50,000 punitive damage payment for emotional distress, total $145,000, non-negotiable. "He'll never agree," I said. "He won't," Marcella agreed. "And that's the point. We don't want him to settle. We want to take him to court. This offer is just to show the judge, later, that we were willing to be reasonable while his side was offering nothing but insults. We're building our narrative." The week before the main hearing on the motion to dismiss, something unexpected happened. I got an email from the Denver chapter of the Interior Design Guild. I had, 6 months ago, submitted my red juniper concept for their annual Innovations in Light Award. It was a small, local award, but prestigious. I had completely forgotten about it. I had won. The email cited my visionary use of energy-efficient 3000K LED systems to create emotional warmth, proving that sustainable design and luxury hospitality are not mutually exclusive. I printed the email. I looked at my name, visionary. I called my boss at Arcadia. "I won," I said, my voice thick. "I know," she said. "I'm the one who secretly resubmitted it for you after the project went on pause. The awards dinner is next week. You are going, and you are going to hold your head high. Arcadia is buying a full table, front and center. The news of the award, combined with the Business Journal article, created a new narrative. I wasn't the unstable daughter. I was the award-winning designer, being criminally harassed by her disgraced embezzler father. The PR tide had turned. My father's lawyer must have seen it. 2. We received a new offer. This one was panicked. They would drop the lien. They would pay my $70,000 lost contract. But no public apology, and no punitive damages. A gag order for all parties, the offer read. He wanted to buy my silence. What do you think? Marcella asked. It's a solid win. You get your money. I looked at the wall in my cabin, the timeline, the map of lies, the email from the client I'd lost. No, I said. It's not about the money, not anymore. It's about the apology. It's about him. For once in his life, being forced to tell the truth. He called 15 people to tell a lie. He's going to call them all back to tell the truth. Marcella's smile was pure steel. Good. Then we go to court. We'll see him at the hearing for the motion to strike, and we will destroy him. The last week was a blur. My base camp was in full operation. My friends, my real family, formed a perimeter. Talia showed up one night, exhausted from a 12-hour shift at the bakery. She presented me with a box. Inside was a dozen cookies, all meticulously frosted, as gavels. I call them Justice, with chocolate chips, she announced. We sat on the deck, eating them, laughing until my stomach hurt. It felt good to laugh. Nora came by the next night. She found me pacing, rehearsing my testimony in my head. She's a paramedic. She lives on adrenaline, but she's the calmest person I know. You're spinning, she said, stopping me. You know the facts. The facts are on your side. What you're scared of is him, his voice, his presence. She sat me down. We're going to breathe, she said, and she ran me through the breathing exercises she uses on panicked patients in the back of her ambulance. Box breathing, 4 seconds in, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. We did it for 20 minutes, until my heart rate slowed, until the panic receded. You don't have to fight him, she said. You just have to stand still and tell the truth. The facts will do the fighting. The night before the hearing, Miles arrived. He was my tech guardian. Okay, he said, pulling out his laptop. Let's run the backups. He sat at my desk and went to work. He knew I had all the evidence Gavin's USB, the voicemails, the scanned emails on my encrypted drive. 1 is none, 2 is 1, he muttered, like a mantra. He created 3 separate, fully encrypted backups, one on a new thumb drive, which he labeled Go Bag, and handed to me, one on his own military-grade encrypted server, which he could access remotely, and one, just for good measure, that he couriered to Marcella's office for her paralegal to hold. Every file is backed up in triplicate, he said, closing his laptop. The voicemails, the emails, the bank statements, the embezzlement file. If your father's lawyer claims a file is corrupted or lost, we can have it on the court's screen in 30 seconds. He looked at me, his expression serious. You're ready, Em. You've done the work. You have the receipts. All you have to do tomorrow is show them. I nodded. I looked at my wall, the map of his lies, and I felt, for the first time, not anger, not fear, just a cold, hard readiness. Tomorrow. The lights were coming on, and I was the one controlling the switch. The hearing for the motion to strike was in a formal courtroom, numbered 3B. It was paneled in dark wood that had absorbed decades of quiet misery, and it smelled of old paper and floor wax. The judge was new, not the dry, sharp woman from the TRO hearing, but an older man. Judge Alistair Kent. He was known. Marcella had warned me. For reading absolutely everything. He had a stack of files in front of him, and he was peering at them through thin, gold-rimmed glasses, as if they held a personal offense. My father was there, at the opposite table. He looked smaller. The Business Journal article had done its work. He was no longer the imposing CEO. He was just a man in an expensive suit, trying not to look like the thief the entire city now knew him to be. He stared fixedly at the polished wood of his table. "We are here," Judge Kent announced, his voice a gravelly baritone, "on the defendant's motion to strike the plaintiff's claim and dissolve the associated lies pendens. Ms. Quinn, you filed?" "Yes, Your Honor," Marcella said, standing. "And Mr. Harris," the judge said, looking at Martin's lawyer, "you are claiming this is a valid debt, eh?" "Verbal loan. I believe—" Harris stood, a little too quickly. "That's correct, Your Honor. This is a simple matter of an intra-family loan that went into default, a father helping his daughter. We believe the counterclaim of harassment is just an attempt to obfuscate the debt." The judge leaned forward, his hands clasped. He looked at Harris. "A verbal loan, for $200,000. Yes, Your Honor, an early inheritance, delivered by hand." "Delivered by hand," the judge repeated, his voice flat. He was not asking. He was confirming. "Cash, in 2022. "Family matters are often informal, Your Honor," Harris said, with a weak, placating smile. The judge was not smiling. "I see. So, you are alleging your client, Mr. Price, gave his daughter $200,000 in a bag?" Harris's smile faltered. "It was a cash transfer. Yes." "So," the judge continued, his voice dangerously quiet, "you have, of course, a bank record, a withdrawal slip, something showing your client had $200,000 in cash to deliver by hand on that date." Silence. It was not a long silence. It was a tiny, dense pocket of vacuum. But in that courtroom, it was deafening. Harris shuffled his papers. My father's jaw tightened. "Mr. Harris," the judge prompted. "As I said, Your Honor, these matters are often informal. We are not in possession of those specific records at this time." "You are not in possession," the judge said, "of any proof, at all, that this money ever existed, let alone that it was transferred. In a good-faith family dispute," he said the words with profound distaste. He turned his gaze to Marcella. "Ms. Quinn, please tell me you have something more substantial than a ghost story." Marcella stood. She didn't have a briefcase. She had the binder, my binder, the one I had built in my apartment. "We do, Your Honor. We have Exhibit A. It is the defendant's complete, verified financial history for the past 6 years." She placed a copy on the judge's bench. "What you will find in this binder is not a mystery. Your Honor, you will find Ms. Price's salary from Arcadia Lumens. You will find her W-2 tax forms. You will find the statements from her independent index funds. You will find the dividends, which she methodically reinvested. You will find the source of the down payment for the cabin, which, as you can see on tab 4, came directly from her own high-yield savings account." She paused. "What you will not find is a single strange deposit. You will not find $200,000 in cash. You will not find any unexplained windfalls. You will find only the steady, documented, meticulous savings of a woman building a life for herself, a life that was paid for, 100%, by her—" The judge was flipping through the tabs, his brow furrowed. He was actually reading it. "And that," Marcella said, her voice dropping, "brings us to the motive for this ghost story." Harris shot up. "Objection motive is not relevant to the debt." "Sit down, counselor," the judge snapped, not looking up from the binder. "I am very interested in the motive for filing a baseless lien, which has clouded the title of a property without a single shred of evidence. Continue. Ms. Quinn." "Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff, Martin Price, did not file this lawsuit to reclaim a debt. He filed it to hide a crime." Harris was on his feet again. "Your Honor, this is outrageous slander." "It is, in fact, public record, Your Honor," Marcella countered, her voice like ice. "Submitted as Exhibit B, the Denver Business Journal article detailing the separate lawsuit filed against Mr. Price by his business partner, Mr. Gavin Pierce, an $800,000 embezzlement suit." The judge looked up from my binder. His eyes were hard. "I read that one, 2. You are connecting these two cases. Ms. Quinn? They are the same case. Your Honor, Mr. Price was caught stealing from his company. He was desperate. He needed to hide the money, or he needed to secure a new asset to cover his losses. So he filed a fraudulent lien against his own daughter's house. This is not a lawsuit. It is an act of financial desperation by a cornered criminal. He is attempting to use this court to finish the job. She had used the word criminal. My father, for the first time, looked up. He looked at me. There was no remorse, no sadness, just a black, bottomless hatred. The hatred of a man who had been caught. The judge closed my binder. He set it aside. He looked at Martin's lawyer. Mr. Harris, he said, I find your client's claim to be frivolous, malicious, and frankly, an insult to the intelligence of this court. It is a clear-cut case of slander of title. The motive, as established by the parallel civil suit, is not to seek justice, but to obstruct it. This court will not be used as a tool for extortion. He picked up his gavel. The plaintiff's case is dismissed. With prejudice, the words echoed. He could never file it again. It was over. Furthermore, the judge continued, looking at my father, I find that this entire action was brought in bad faith. I am therefore awarding full attorney's fees to the defendant. Ms. Emery Price, you filed this frivolous suit. Mr. Price, you will pay for it. For all of it. He banged the gavel. We are adjourned. It was done. My father sat, frozen, as his lawyer packed up, his face grim. Marcella put her hand on my shoulder. Breathe, Emery. I hadn't realized I was holding my breath. It came out in a long, shaky sigh. I stood up. My legs felt like they were full of sand. We walked out of the courtroom. The heavy doors clicked shut behind us. The noise of the hallway, the chatter of other lawyers, the ringing phones, all rushed in. I leaned against the marble wall. We did it, Marcella said, a small, tight smile on her face. He can't touch your house. The lien will be dissolved by end of day. I nodded. I closed my eyes. Just for a second. That's one, I whispered, straightening up. That was for the house. The next one is for my name. I wasn't celebrating. The war wasn't over. He had tried to steal my property, and he had failed, but he had succeeded in damaging my reputation. The defamation suit was still pending. That was the real fight. We were back in Marcella's office an hour later, drinking lukewarm coffee. When the email came in, it was from Harris. Well, Marcella said, reading it, they're panicked. They're trying to stop the bleeding. She turned the monitor toward me. It was a settlement offer, not for the lien that was already dead. This was for the defamation claim, my counterclaim. They were offering $50,000. $50,000, I said. It was a random number, an insult. Read the fine print, Marcella said. It's a full and final settlement, in exchange for $50,000 and, quote, a mutual non-disparagement agreement, a gag order. He wants to pay me to be quiet, I said. He was still trying to buy my silence. He had lost, and he was still trying to control the narrative. It's a solid offer, Emery, Marcella said, playing devil's advocate. You take the money. You're clear. The fight is over. I looked at her. I thought about the wall in my cabin, the map of his lies, the 12 emails from clients and colleagues, the $70,000 contract I had lost. No, I said. No. This isn't about the money, I said. Not anymore. It was, at first. But now, it's about the truth. He used his words to try and destroy me. He's not going to pay to hide that. He's going to pay to fix it. I leaned forward. A new, cold clarity settled over me. A strategic, focused plan. We're going to counter, I said. With what? First, the money. I don't want $50,000. I want $70,000. It's not a punishment. It's a reimbursement. It's the exact amount of the city park contract I lost. He doesn't get to lowball me on what he cost me. Okay, $70,000. What else? Second, I said, the apology, the mutual gag order is rejected. He's not silencing me. Instead, he is going to write a letter, a full formal letter of retraction and apology, and we are going to draft it. It will state that his previous claims of my financial instability, bankruptcy, and personal crisis were false, malicious, and without merit. It will state that he apologizes for the damage to my professional reputation. Marcella was typing, a predatory smile spreading across her face. I like it, a forced apology. And third, I said, he is going to send that signed letter, on his own letterhead, to every single person on my defamation map, all 15 of them. He doesn't just apologize to me, he apologizes to them. He called them to tell a lie. He's going to email them to tell the truth. Marcella stopped typing. Emery, that's brilliant. He'll never agree. It's a complete humiliation. He'll agree, I said, because we're not just suing him. We're suing a man who is already being sued for embezzlement. We sent the counteroffer at 4 p.m. The response from Harris was almost immediate. This is outrageous. This is non-negotiable, Marcella replied. You're right. It is. See you at the defamation hearing. We waited. The other side was silent. All of Tuesday, all of Wednesday morning, the pressure was building. They're deciding which poison tastes worse, Marcella said. Public humiliation, or a long, drawn-out defamation trial on top of his fraud case. Then, at 3 p.m. on Wednesday, my phone buzzed. It was Marcella. I picked it up. Emery, she said. She wasn't smiling. Her voice was serious. They're done. They rejected the offer. No, she said. They just ran out of road. I just got a call from a colleague at the courthouse. Bad news for Martin. What? Gavin Pierce's lawsuit, the one for $800,000. It just survived its first motion to dismiss. The court has officially accepted it. It's been assigned a trial docket. It's real, and it's moving forward. She let that sink in. His lawyer isn't just negotiating with us anymore, she said. He's negotiating with a man who has no credibility, no leverage, and is about to be buried under a fraud trial. That $70,000 and an apology, it's the best deal he's going to get all year. Marcella's call came at 9 a.m. on Thursday. The news about Gavin's lawsuit had been the final straw. Harris, my father's lawyer, had capitulated completely. He signed, Marcella said. Her voice was flat, professional. The hunt was over. The settlement is on my desk. They're wiring the $70,000 to my trust account right now. It will clear by tomorrow. And, Emery, I have the letter, the apology letter, the apology letter. She confirmed. Signed by Martin Price. In blue ink. I closed my eyes. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't joy. It was the feeling of a heavy, heavy weight being lifted. A weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. It was the end. I'll be right there, I said. An hour later, I was in her office, a certified check for $70,000 in my hand. The money felt abstract. It was a number, a reimbursement. It was the letter that I had come for. Marcella slid it across the desk. It was on his personal letterhead, the thick, cream-colored stock I remembered from his study, the stationery of a man of importance. The text, however, was not his. It was ours. To all concerned parties. It began. This letter is to serve as a formal retraction and apology. In recent weeks, I made a series of false and malicious statements regarding the personal and financial status of Ms. Emery Price. My claims of her financial instability, impending bankruptcy, and personal crisis were without merit, factually incorrect, and were made with the intent to cause her professional harm. I deeply regret the damage my actions have caused to her reputation. I retract every one of these false statements. In full. It was signed. Martin Price. The signature was tight, angry. The signature of a man signing a confession under duress. He must have hated this, I said, my voice quiet, running my thumb over the embossed letterhead. He had no choice. Marcella said, it was this, or have his embezzlement case and our defamation suit tried in the same month. He chose the humiliation he could control. Thank you, Marcella, for everything. You did the work. Emery, she said, packing up my file. You had the receipts. You just needed someone to help you show them. I walked out of her office. I didn't go to the cabin. I went to my apartment. I sat at my desk, the apology letter in my hand. I pulled up my email. I pulled up my defamation map. I scanned the letter. Creating a clean PDF, I composed a new email. The subject line was simple: a follow-up and a formal retraction. The body was just as simple: to all my valued clients and colleagues. As many of you know, my professional reputation was recently and falsely attacked. The person responsible for those statements has now issued a formal, signed retraction. That letter is attached. My good name is restored, and the matter is now closed. I look forward to continuing our work. I added the 15 names to the BCC line, I attached the PDF, and I hit send. The response was immediate. Within an hour, I had replies. They were full of support, relief, and, in some cases, anger on my behalf. Emery, we never doubted you. This is incredible. Good for you. That man is a monster. The next day, 2 phone calls. The first was from the development firm, the one whose boss I had strong-armed into writing a letter. We got your email, he said. And the retraction. That took guts. Look, the city park project is back on, if you'll have us. Full fee, plus a 10% we're sorry bonus. The second was from a new number. A large architectural firm I had been trying to get a meeting with for a year. Ms. Price, we've been following your work. We saw the piece on your red juniper concept, and we just got off the phone with Maria Flores. She speaks very highly of you. We have a new hospitality project, a flagship hotel. We think you're the only designer in Denver who can light it. Can you be here on Monday? I hung up the phone. The $70,000 check was on my desk. But this was the real victory, not the money, the work. He had tried to take the work, and in the end, the work was all that was left. My first act as a newly solvent, fully vindicated designer was to hire an assistant. The projects were flooding in. I couldn't handle the spec sheets and the renderings alone anymore. I posted the job. I got dozens of applications, but one resume stuck out. Jasmine. She was a recent graduate from a state college. Her portfolio was raw, but it was brilliant. She had a note in her cover letter. I don't just want to light rooms. I want to tell stories with light. I interviewed her. She was nervous, ambitious, and she was hungry. She reminded me of myself. 10 years ago. You've got the job, I said. It's a lot of work, long hours, but you'll learn everything. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You have no idea what this means. I've been trying so hard to get someone to just see me. I do, actually, I said. Welcome to the team, Jasmine. While I was rebuilding, the old structure I had escaped was collapsing. The news came in fragments, not from them, but from the static of the world. Elaine, my mother, filed for legal separation. Sloan had been right. The secret second mortgage was the final betrayal. Elaine, who had spent her life enabling my father's tyranny in exchange for financial security, had found out the security was a mirage. She was, as Marcella put it, a creditor, just like the rest of us. She moved out of the house and into a sterile, high-rise condo. Sloan, cut off from the family fund, was forced to get a real job. The car lease my father paid for was repossessed. Her husband, it turned out, hadn't been thrilled by a life funded by his father-in-law. They separated. Sloan, with her 2 children, moved into a small, rented apartment. The last I heard, she was managing a small art gallery in Cherry Creek. We had not spoken since the night she came to my door. And Martin's fall was total. Gavin Pierce's lawsuit, combined with the lawsuits from the lenders, was a catastrophic, unwinnable war. He lost the company he had built and looted. He filed for personal bankruptcy. The large house I grew up in was sold at auction to cover the secret mortgage. His name, once a staple of the Business Journal's society pages, was now a cautionary tale, a lesson in ethical risk. He was a ghost. A man who had lost his company, his money, and his family, all in one terrible, self-inflicted blaze. I had no contact with any of them. That was my one, hard rule. Marcella had drafted a final letter, sent to all three of their new attorneys. Ms. Price considers this matter closed. She does not wish to be contacted by your clients for any reason. All future communication, should it be absolutely necessary, will go through my office. I had built a wall. It was tall, it was permanent, and I was, finally, safe behind it. My life found a new rhythm. It was a rhythm I set myself. My work at Arcadia was thriving. Jasmine was a godsend. And the cabin was no longer a fortress. It was a home. It became our ritual. The first weekend of every month, my friends, my firewall, Nora, Miles, and Talia. We drove up on Friday night. We swam in the lake. We took the kayaks out to the little island in the middle. We played marathon rounds of a ridiculous card game Miles had invented. We cooked huge, messy meals, and at night, we would sit on the deck, all the lights in the cabin off, the only illumination coming from the stars and the soft, warm, 3,000 K-string lights. I had hung from the pine trees. We didn't talk about my father. We didn't talk about the lawsuit. We talked about Nora's impossible patience, and Talia's new croissant recipe, and Miles's attempts to build a robot that could water his plants. We talked about nothing and everything. One night, we were all out on the deck. The air was cool. The beginning of a new autumn. The sky was so clear you could see the haze of the Milky Way. "A toast," Nora said, holding up her beer. "To Emery." "To Emery," Miles and Talia echoed. "No," I said, holding up my own. "To us. You guys. You were my wall. You were the ones who showed up. I wouldn't be here without you." "Yeah, you would," Nora said, bumping my shoulder. "You just would have been a lot grumpier about it. We just brought the snacks." I looked out at the dark water, the silence of the lake. It was the same silence I had felt on my 27th birthday. But it wasn't empty. It was full. It was peace. I didn't need a family to recognize me. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need them to show up. I was here. I had my friends. I had my work. I had myself. And a few weeks later, it was my birthday. My 28th, I threw the party myself. I invited everyone. Nora, Miles, Talia, my boss from Arcadia, Jasmine, the clients who had stuck by me. I hung string lights all over the cabin, all over the deck, all the way down to the boathouse. The entire property was glowing with that warm, nostalgic light. Talia baked a cake that was a work of art. Miles made a playlist that was perfect. We were all on the deck, the night air crisp and cold, the fire pit blazing. Someone brought out the cake, and as they all started to sing Happy Birthday, I looked around, at these faces, at this place. This life I had built, not from family money or opportunities, but with my own 2 hands. I blew out the candles, and for the first time in my life, I didn't have to wish for anything. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I was cleaning up. I walked down to the boathouse to put away the extra chairs. It was quiet, just the sound of the lake lapping against the pilings. I stopped. In the back, on a high shelf I had built, was a box. It was a small, dark wooden box, unadorned. It waned part of the cabin. I had brought it here, one of the first things I had moved. I reached up and pulled it down. It was heavy. I ran my fingers over the wood. It was my 17th birthday present. Not from my parents. They had forgotten. As usual. It was from my great-grandmother, my father's mother, a stern, quiet woman who had been a bookkeeper. She had given it to me, a week before she passed away. "Don't open it," she had told me, her voice a papery whisper. "Not yet. You'll know when it's time. Don't let him see it." Him. She had meant my father. I had never opened it. I had hidden it, just as she'd asked. Through college, through my first apartment, and now it was here, in the boathouse. I looked at the box. I thought about the lawsuit, the $200,000 lie, the verbal loan from 2022. I thought about my father's hatred in that courtroom. I thought about my great-grandmother, the bookkeeper, and I suddenly had a very cold, very clear feeling. I had won the battle, but the war had started a long, long time ago. I held the box. It was locked, and I didn't have the key. The peace lasted for 3 weeks, 3 weeks where my life was my own. My work was thriving. Jasmine was learning fast. The Red Juniper Project, now back on and fast-tracked, was winning praise internally at Arcadia. My $70,000 check had cleared. The apology letters had been received by my clients. My name was clean. I was at the cabin. It was a Saturday. I was working in my studio. The window open. The smell of pine and cold lake water filling the room. A car door slammed. It wasn't one of my friends. I didn't recognize the car. A black sedan parked awkwardly in my gravel driveway. A man in a cheap suit got out. He was holding a briefcase. He looked like the kind of man who enjoyed delivering bad news. I felt nothing. Not fear, just a profound, bone-deep weariness. I walked out onto the deck. "This is private property," I called down. The man looked up. A synthetic smile plastered on his face. "Ms. Emery Price, my name is Mr. Jones. I'm here on behalf of an interested party concerning this beautiful property." "There is no interested party," I said. "You're trespassing." "Now, Ms. Price, that's not a very collaborative attitude," he said, taking a step toward the staircase. "See, my client has a deep familial interest in this land. He's authorized me to offer you a new proposal, a common use agreement. It outlines a generous schedule for him and his associates to use the property. In exchange, he'll agree not to pursue further legal action." I stared at him. The TRO, the court order. He is prohibited from contacting Emery Price, directly or indirectly. This was it. A third party, an indirect contact, a threat. "He's offering to not sue me," I said, my voice dead calm. "He has no grounds to sue me. The court already ruled." The man's smile faltered. "My client believes the judge was in error. He is preparing an appeal. This agreement," he said, patting his briefcase, "makes all that go away. He just wants what's fair. He just wants his family back." He had violated the restraining order, after everything, after losing his house, his company, his wife. He was still trying. "Get off my property," I said. "Ms. Price, I strongly urge you to reconsider." "I am not reconsidering," I said. I pulled out my phone. "In exactly 30 seconds, I am calling the county sheriff and reporting you for trespassing, and reporting your client for violating a TRO. I hope the drive was worth it." The man's face turned white. He had thought I was a girl. He had thought I would be scared. He didn't realize I was a woman who had memorized her legal file. He scrambled back to his car, fumbling his keys, and sped away, spitting gravel. I didn't tremble. I didn't cry. I made 2 calls. The first was to the sheriff. I gave them the man's description, the car's make and model, and a clear, concise report of the threat. "Yes, ma'am," the deputy said. "Violating a TRO is a serious offense. We'll find him." The second was to Marcella. "He did it," I said. "He broke the TRO." Marcella was silent. "Okay," she said, her voice a steel blade. "This is the end. He just gave us the keys to his own jail cell. I'm calling his lawyer. I'm calling the district attorney's office. And I am arranging a final, in-person meeting. He wanted to negotiate. Fine. We will negotiate his surrender." The final confrontation was set for the following Tuesday. At the cabin, my father's lawyer, Harris, had protested, demanding a neutral location. Marcella had refused. "Your client violated the order at her home. We will resolve this at her home. It will be supervised. My client, you, your client, and 2 deputies from the sheriff's office. That's the deal. I was on my deck when they arrived, the black sedan from the other day, with the sheriff's deputies, then Harris, his face grim, and finally, my father, Martin, in a car I didn't recognize, some cheap rental. He looked thin, sallow, the swagger was gone. "Emery," he said, his voice hoarse. "Martin," I said. The name felt correct. Marcella was already there, sitting at my patio table, a laptop and a small, portable projector beside her. "Let's get this over with," Harris said, his voice testy. "Mr. Price is here, against my advice, to show good faith. That man who came, Mr. Jones, was an independent third-party mediator, a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that is currently being documented in a holding cell," the deputy said, his voice bored. "Let's keep this civil." "My client," Harris said, puffing up, "is willing to drop all future claims. He just wants closure. And in the spirit of that closure, we have found new evidence." Marcella and I locked eyes. "New evidence," she said, her voice laced with amusement. "A document," Harris said. "That proves the good faith of my client all along." He pulled a piece of paper from his briefcase. He slid it onto the table. It was a printout of an email. It was dated March 2022. The sender was Emery Price, the recipient, Martin Price. The text was short. "Dad, thanks for agreeing to help me out. The $200,000 is exactly what I need to get my portfolio started. I'll make you proud. I'll pay you back as soon as I can." It was a fake, a clumsy, obvious fake. The email address was wrong, a Gmail I'd never used. The tone was wrong. "This is," I started. "This is your smoking gun," Marcella interrupted, picking it up. It's a clear admission of the loan," Harris said. "We are prepared to use this to appeal the ruling." My father was staring at me, a desperate, frantic look in his eyes. He thought this would work. He thought one last lie would save him. I looked at him. The man who had built a false empire, who had faked invoices, who had lied about second mortgages, and I realized he had forgotten where he came from. He had forgotten his own mother. I looked at Marcella. "He's forgotten about my great-grandmother." I stood up. I walked past them, past the deputies, and down the steps toward the boathouse. I could hear them following me. "Emery, where are you going?" my father called out. I didn't answer. I went into the boathouse. It was dark, smelling of lake water and old wood. I went to the shelf. I took down the wooden box, the one from my 17th birthday. I had found the key, weeks ago, taped to the underside in a small, wax paper envelope. I brought the box back out onto the dock, into the cold, bright daylight. I set it on an empty barrel. "What is this?" Harris snapped. "More theatrics." "My great-grandmother," I said, fitting the key in the lock, "was a bookkeeper. She knew her son." I opened the box. Inside was a black, leather-bound ledger and a small, simple USB drive, a very old one. I opened the ledger. Her handwriting was meticulous, perfect cursive. "Personal accounts," it read. I flipped to a page near the end, dated the week of my 17th birthday. "I have set aside," I read aloud, "$10,000 for Emery. It is her inheritance. It is not to be touched by Martin. Martin is a fool, and he is a liar. He has been stealing from the family account since he was 20. This money is to be invested. This money is to be her seed." My father's face was ashen. "That's a lie. She was a senile old woman." "She was a bookkeeper," I said, "and she kept receipts." I handed the ledger to the deputy, then I picked up the USB drive. She was also, it turns out, very forward-thinking. I walked over to Marcella and handed her the drive. "Exhibit C," I said. Marcella plugged it into her laptop. She aimed the projector at the wide, flat, white-painted door of the boathouse. My father, I said, is a man who builds stories out of ghosts, fake invoices, fake loans, fake emails. I prefer data. Marcella clicked a file. The projector whirred. An image appeared on the door. It was the fake email Harris had just produced. Here, Marcella said, is Mr. Price's story, a $200,000 loan that my client asked for. A complete fabrication. She clicked again. A new image appeared. It was a spreadsheet, a financial timeline. And here, Marcella said, her voice sharp, is the truth from the USB drive and cross-referenced with my client's own funding proof binder. July 2018, a $10,000 inheritance from her great-grandmother. August 2018, Vanguard account opened. Seed deposit, $10,000. The next 6 years meticulous, documented, bi-weekly deposits from her salary at Arcadia Lumens and her freelance contracts, no large deposits, no family loans, no $200,000 transfers, no ghosts. She turned to Harris. Your client's lie is sloppy, counselor. He invented a number, but he forgot to check his own mother's bookkeeping. Harris was silent. He was looking at the spreadsheet. He was beaten. My father was shaking. You did this after everything I gave you. You gave me nothing, I yelled back, the years of silence finally breaking. You gave me empty chairs at graduations. You gave me forgotten birthdays. You tried to steal my house. You tried to ruin my name, and you stand here still lying. Mr. Price? The senior deputy said, stepping forward. My father didn't hear him. He was looking at me, his face contorted in a mask of pure, desperate rage. He took a step toward me. The deputy put his hand on my father's chest. Mr. Price? That's far enough. You're here because you violated a restraining order. That was a misunderstanding, Harris shouted. Mr. Jones was an independent. Mr. Jones, the deputy said, reading from a notebook, has given a full statement. He was paid $500 in cash by Mr. Martin Price. He was instructed to deliver a common use agreement and to scare the girl. That's a felony violation. Martin froze. And while we were processing that, the deputy continued, his voice calm, we received a call from the district attorney's office. It seems the DA, who is prosecuting your other case, Mr. Price, is very interested in this. He looked at the fake email, still projected on the boathouse door. He is very interested in your attempt to fabricate evidence. He is extremely interested in your attempt to intimidate and coerce a primary witness in an ongoing felony investigation. He calls it obstruction of justice and witness tampering. My father looked, for the first time, like a cornered animal. Martin Price, the deputy said, you are under arrest for the violation of TRO 1138 and on suspicion of tampering with a witness. The second deputy pulled my father's hands behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was sharp, metallic, and final. As they led him away, he stopped. He looked back, not at me, but past me, toward the trees. I turned. Sloane was standing there, at the edge of the woods. She was holding her son's hand. She looked small. She had come to watch. She wasn't on his side. She wasn't on my side. She was just a witness. My father saw her. His face crumpled. Sloane, he yelled. Family? This is what you do to family. He looked at me, his eyes begging. I stepped forward. I looked at the man in handcuffs, the man who had built my cage. Family, I said, and my voice didn't shake. Doesn't use lies as chains. The deputies didn't wait. They put him in the car. Marcella shut her laptop. Harris was silent, packing his briefcase, a beaten man. My friends, Nora, Miles, and Talia, who had been sitting on the deck as silent witnesses, came down to the dock. Marcella snapped on the main boathouse floodlights. The entire dock was bathed in a brilliant 3,000 K light, chasing away the last of the afternoon shadows. Everything was clean. Everything was visible. The police car started. It drove up my gravel driveway and disappeared. The sound of the engine faded. The lake was still. I looked at the railing. There was a single, teal-colored birthday candle, left over from the party, melted and stuck to the wood. I walked over to it. I looked at the water. I looked at my friends. I looked at my cabin, mine. I took a deep breath of the cold, clean air, and I blew the candle out. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and let's share our thoughts. Remember to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it a huge boost by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this journey.